Sporting Tribune fans, welcome to another episode of West Coast Big Ten. My name is Anthony Nguyen of the Sporting Tribune. I have my co-host, UCL legend and sideline reporter, Wayne Cook. Wayne, you were right, almost right about that prediction about UCLA. You had them winning by three. They were winning by three, by the way, in that last drive.
This Pac-12. As a matter of fact, before we came on, I was just reading about all the former Pac-12 schools and all the travel, and there's a few outliers. Oregon and Arizona State's doing pretty good. There's a whole lot of losses. Maybe the travel's going to be a bigger deal than we thought, and it should go both ways though. The other schools have to travel out here. Uh, UCLA, Minnesota. I thought we could hang with them. I was very impressed with what our defense did. They 200 and less than 250 offense for Minnesota, so the defense did a great job. Bummer that they gave up the touchdown at the end that led to the victory. But again, UCLA was stuck at their under 20 and only scored 17. It was really nice to see Garbers hit J. Michael Sturdivant for the post to take the lead. But again, it's the same story until you can score points. I mean, literally, if 17 after 6 games is the highest points you could score on the year, that's pretty bad. And I still think it starts up front. Um, I think we saw T.J. Harden do some, and this is really a couple games in a row now. Out of the backfield with him catching the ball, he's made some great plays. Really explosive. He's shown what he can do. And this week it didn't. I don't care who the running back was. They're just not getting enough push, and they can't even get started. So the run game's been abysmal. I think we ran for 35 or 36 yards. So for me, it was a bummer. Um, I do think there's a shot at a victory here, but you got to go, all the way to the other side of the country to try and do it, and it's been proven that that's pretty hard to do. But I think Rutgers is a very gettable game. But unless you're going to score more than 17 points, although I will say this about Rutgers, they don't score a lot of points either. So especially the last 2 games, I think they've had 7 in both of those. So it's a should be a good week for UCLA. I'm hopeful.
I wanted to talk about UCLA towards the end of our segment, but I couldn't help it. I want to dig deep in. And there's like a lot of stuff going on in the forums. I know that Bruin Online was talking about on their podcast about the game management towards the last 2 minutes and if Deshaun should have just went for it on fourth. But my point was the defense was playing phenomenal. And I trust that defense. You've seen it up close and personal. You're there reporting, and they were just tired. They're on the field most of the time. And to your point, Wayne, is if that offense can get on fire, if we can score more than 17 points as our season high against LSU, I think Rutgers should be a piece of cake. We should carry that momentum going back to taking it back to the Rose Bowl.
So for me, I mean, I won't ever label anything a piece of cake because we're just not that team right now. And I also think we're a long ways away from exploding on offense. I think we need to be average on offense. If we could, run for 85 yards in a game, I think that'd be a huge success. Excuse me. So like to me, and I know, and I pay attention to this stuff too. The most popular player on a team that's losing is almost always the backup quarterback. And because Justin Martin played pretty well against, even though I remind people that was our lowest scoring output of the season against Penn State, but he did. He looked solid. I feel like it's going to, Ethan Garbers actually did a lot of really good things in this game. He threw for near 300 yards. 2 of the interceptions weren't really real. One looked like the ball, the nose was on the ground. They probably should have been incomplete, and then the one that was tipped was bad. And then they had the Hail Mary. So other than that, though, you still have to score points. We were spreading the ball to 9 different receivers, and it just feels like we can't get anything in the end zone. So it was good to see the deep ball. I hope we stick to that. J. Mike, on posts and streaks is probably a pretty good idea to utilize a couple times a game, even if you don't hit them. Keep going deep. But I would settle for a 25-point game. I think if we do that and keep the defense off the field, as you pointed out, because I agree with you. I think they do get tired as the game wears on. I also agree that at that point in the game, the way your defense is playing with the lead, why would inside your own 15, 10-yard line, why would you go for it there? Fourth down, you're winning. You're winning. Why would you? Why would it? Because if you go for it there and you don't get it, they're already in field goal range. Like
Right.
that to me is not you can't quite. I think almost 99% of sane coaches punt there. You could question the play calling on first and second down. You could question stuff like that because we couldn't run the ball. So then we finally throw the ball in Matavao, and he ends up getting tackled just short. And he tried to run over a guy, and he did a pretty good job of trying to get a first down there. We just couldn't get it. I think you have to punt there, and you have to put it on your defense, especially with the lead the way we had it. So I don't question that call at all.
Yeah. And I think that also, and I agree with you. There was, where our defense is playing great. I trust our defense, and on the same boat as that. Now, going back to the quarterback situation, um, in an instance, let's say UCLA doesn't win their next few games. Is Justin Martin the guy for the rest of the season and building up that momentum for next season?
So I've heard this question posed, and I've even talked to people at the Rose Bowl, just fans, and I love all of them, right? And you get every, you know, Justin's taller, he's more athletic, which by the way is like I don't. They're both the same. They both can run okay. Ethan Garber's a very athletic guy. He can run. Yes, Justin Martin is taller, but they're the same type of quarterback. This goes back to I remember a couple of games ago, someone was talking about, well, the coaches, how do they game plan for the both of them? I don't know. You game plan the exact same way because they're very similar quarterbacks. They're drop back guys that can run, but it wasn't like it was one was running nothing but zone read and RPOs, and the other one, it's just made me laugh a little bit. But the idea is this, and I hate this. Like if you have a player that's been in your program for a long time and like, for example, I'll go back to my senior year. This is a year after I played in the Rose Bowl. We won our first two games, beat Tennessee. We were ranked really high, and then everybody got hurt. JJ Stokes and like our linemen, and we fell apart. We lost 6 games in a row. I can't even imagine what would have happened if Terry Donahue would have come up to me and say, "Hey, Cookie, thanks for everything you've done for us, but we're not going to play you anymore, even though you're the best quarterback."
Right.
Because we're gonna go with Ryan Fiend or whoever, and that's not a knock on those guys. We're gonna go with the youth movement. I'd have been livid, and I would have told every recruit, "Why would you ever want to play with this guy?
Yeah.
It's a kid's career, and if they earn the starting job, they play the starting job." And I'm gonna tell everybody that's listening right now, if you want to recruit, you need to win some games. So you want to play your best players to win games. And I'm telling you, man, the quickest way for a team to quit on coaches is if they start playing the wrong people. We all out of practice
Right.
every day, and if the best player is not playing, that's a problem. And so to me, if Justin Martin wins the job, then he should play. If
Yeah.
Ethan throws 4 interceptions in the next game, and it's becoming like because he's had a lot of interceptions, I tried to point out that a couple of those weren't really his fault, and even the one that was questionable, he had a guy right in his face that someone completely missed their block. That happens all the
Yeah.
time. I mean, it's like my gosh, it's like guys right in his face, and he's trying to make a play because he's the quarterback that wants to score points. So
Yeah.
to me, um, I'm all for a guy beating you out. If you beat me out, if any of those young quarterbacks that I played on team, if they were better than me, I'd have been like, you know what, man, I got to live with that. But if they're
Yeah.
not better than me, then I'd be like, I don't even know if I can handle that. And so I just think they need to start winning games. And if you do that, it'll help going forward. And then the next quarterback, Garbers will be gone. And then whoever wins the job next year is going to win the job next year. That's just my opinion. And maybe I'm a little sensitive because I'm a QB, but this whole playing for the future thing makes zero sense to me because winning games is the best way to play for the future, especially with a brand new coaching staff.
I agree. And you know what? I call us slack in the beginning of the season. I think on the podcast, Westwood Open House, I said that bar none, Ethan Garber's a top three quarterback in the Big Ten. And I mean, Ethan's not playing to that level right now, but I think people have amnesia. Those runs that you saw against Hawaii, Ethan can run. Let's not get that, let's not forget about that.
And quickly, just to add to your point, because I felt the same way, and I still do. If you take Ethan and you put a quarterback that has his arm talent, I mean, that post was a perfect throw. He had blocking. He got to step up into the pocket. He got to make a great throw. He threw to 9 different receivers at one point. Or he was spreading the ball over the field. He's had probably the worst blocking um, from an offensive line that I've seen, at UCLA in a long time. It's just this group, and I love all of them, and I'm hoping they're starting to gel. I know just Coach Deshaun Foster just told me yesterday this is gonna be they've had a couple games together now. Now let's see
Yeah.
if this group can start to gel, and I think they've become better at pass blocking. I do. I
Yes,
think
I
they've
see.
been better. They're still making some mistakes, but I think they need to get better at the run blocking part of it. So like I still think, and this is, I'll give you a perfect example of what happens. How many great college quarterbacks that play at Ohio State or Alabama or wherever go to a really bad NFL team and struggle? Is it because they're not good quarterbacks anymore? Or is it because the talent around the quarterback makes a pretty big difference?
Examples, Bryce Young.
Yeah, it's exactly, and there's a lot of them. I mean, you can go back at like 30 years and look at first round draft picks that go to bad NFL teams. If you don't have blocking, if you don't have a run game, if you don't have really good receivers, it makes it hard to be. I mean, even like Joe Burrow had one of the greatest college football seasons ever. He's struggling a little bit right now because they're not blocking for him. Like that makes a big difference if you don't have guys blocking for you, especially when you're a guy that's as precise as he is. He wants to be able to go through his progressions and step to his throws. And Garber's that kind of guy too. He wants to be able to go through his progressions and make the right read, but he doesn't have time. So be careful when you're evaluating these quarterbacks because for especially quarterbacks that aren't naturally going to take off and run all the time. By the way, even Caleb Williams struggled when
Yeah.
the team around him wasn't as good. The Heisman Trophy winner struggled because it's
Yeah.
hard to be a really good quarterback without a good team around you.
I agree. I agree. We'll talk more about the Rutgers game in a sec towards the end of the segment. Wayne, I was wrong. Oregon, I thought was going to go into to Autzen and take that victory. Well, they were winning. They had control of the game most of the game, but man, Dan Lanning pulled it out, and Oregon took it. What was your observation of that game, Wayne? That you saw that was it a solid win? I thought it was a commanding win, by the way, and sets the tone for Oregon's season.
I actually would say that the Oregon Ohio State game lived up to the expectations. It was a fantastic game. I actually feel terrible for Will Howard the way the game ended. I know what it feels like to screw up at the end of games, and it's like, my gosh, I felt for him. I mean, he's a second away of just get down. They had a timeout, um,
Mhm.
but he had a great game. I mean, he completed like 28 passes. He played really really well. Everybody that knows Autzen Stadium knows that that is a very hostile environment to go into. And so my takeaway is both of those teams are just fine. The home team won. I mean, these are two top five teams, right? These are two of the best teams in the country. They won a nail biter where the other team had the ball coming down with a chance to win. And Ohio State is fine.
Yeah.
They're gonna keep winning. They're gonna. I don't. I this is the year they are not. And I'm gonna say this right. They are not gonna lose to Michigan. Ohio
Yeah.
State, Michigan's down this year. I think Ohio State takes them. These two teams are going to end up in the playoffs, and they're going to be competing for it. So it lived up to the hype. And to me, both teams are fine. It sucks to be Ohio State, but you learn from it. It was a tough road game, in a tough stadium, and that's okay. You go back and start winning again, and you might have a chance to maybe even play them again in the playoffs.
I agree. So saying that, Wayne, seeing them in the playoffs, do you think that Ohio State and Oregon are they better teams than you would say, like the Texases, the Alabamas, like more put together, if you will?
This is where this is hard this year. Um, Texas has. We're going to find out a lot about Texas this weekend. Okay, and we're probably going to find out a lot about Georgia this weekend too. And we're going to find out a lot about Alabama this weekend because Texas and Georgia play each other, but Alabama and Tennessee play each other, and that's in Knoxville. So
No.
to me, things are going to start clearing up a little bit. Last week we had that Oregon Ohio State game. We got a couple of you know super games this weekend. So I do think Texas is for real. I think Texas is right there in that same discussion. I think it's funny. Georgia and Alabama have been up on this pedestal for so long. And
Mhm.
I feel like right now they're still in that. If I had to put teams in the top echelon, they're there. But I feel like they've come back down to earth a little bit, especially
Yeah.
Georgia. I feel like they've come back down to earth a little bit. Remember, they just barely beat Kentucky also. And they had the
Those,
loss to Alabama. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. So, like, those teams aren't quite what they were, still elite. And I'm not saying those teams couldn't beat an Oregon. I don't think we have a team that's like, remember when Georgia went back to back? It felt like we all knew that even with a quarterback that wasn't the greatest quarterback in the world, Stetson Bennett, who I'm not trying to be mean. Stetson Bennett is a legendary college quarterback. Nobody can do that. He did great things, but Carson
Yeah,
Beck's a better quarterback. So,
yeah,
like I look at Stetson and what he did and those teams, and let's be honest, those teams were so good. They were like
yeah,
a cut above the rest. I feel like they've come back down to earth a little bit. That being said, I think they're still in that upper echelon, along with a team like Clemson. Clemson is kind of just flying under the radar right now, and it feels like nobody's talking about them. They're really good right now. So I
yeah.
think there's a group at the top. If I had to pick a favorite for the today, I don't know. I still might go with. This is going to sound crazy. I still might go with Ohio State, even though they
Yeah,
lost to Austin, because I think when you get, I think things will change when we get into the postseason. But Ryan Day has got to win a big game. I think that's the big question mark for them.
yeah, I think so too. I think Ohio State just had too much firepower. Where I almost had that game, and you almost had UCLA, and I just think it was a couple calls away. But going back to Dan Lanning, we talked about this last week where his Oregon teams, Wayne, are just sleepwalking sometimes during the games. We didn't see that last week against Ohio State at all. But what can Dan Lanning do to keep his team focused going forward, not sleepwalking to these pivotal games?
It's a really good question. To me, I think that we're living in an era where coaching hard is more difficult than it's ever been. If you're a disciplinarian and you really want to coach hard, if you're the type of coach that's going to tell your kids the truth, even if it hurts, like, listen, this isn't good enough. You're not doing your job. If you're gonna run your team, cuss your team out, do anything that it takes to get the best out of them. We live in an era where players are always like, making the phone call that night to their agent or whoever's in charge of, like, hey, find another place for me. I'm going to transfer next year. The coach is mean. So I feel like even Kalen DeBoer a few weeks ago when he had one of his really good players do some weird things at the end of the game, like kicking a ball and getting in fights and doing weird stuff. It seemed like he didn't really do a whole lot. It's like, and everyone's like, well, Nick Saban would have never allowed that. I'm like, no, he wouldn't have. But Nick Saban also was around during the era where he could still look at a second and third string guy that's a 5-star and say, you need to work harder. And if you do, you'll earn your starting job over time, and then you'll end up in the NFL. And his players just
Yep,
like said, yes, Coach Saban. Okay. Now guys are going, yeah, but I can get $1 million if I go play for USC. You know what I
that's
mean?
true.
So I feel like right now it's probably different than it's ever been in history. Coaches have to have, we talked about the sleepwalking thing. Culture is so hard because when you spend a lot of money, let's just say Oregon and Ohio State have spent over $20 million to bring players in to play for their teams. Now you have a bunch of guys that never, maybe weren't freshmen there and didn't grow up in that culture. And there are also players that have left schools a lot of times that are transfers. I just feel like it's harder to build culture than it has ever been. And it's harder to coach hard than it's ever been. And so, and what I mean by that is sometimes coaches absolutely should be mean and real with their players and let them know exactly what's going on. I trust me, everybody that played in my era, if you didn't get your butt chewed out by your coach on a regular basis, and that doesn't mean just yelling and then hugging you after the practice and saying, hey, that means you go home and sleep on it and feel like crap. Like, and realize like the next day, if I want to be here and I want to play, I have to be better. And so
Yeah.
I know that's still going on. I'm not saying that coaches aren't coaching anymore. I do think it's tough. So after a win like that, it's not going to get like, we start looking at schedules and start deciding, oh, these are wins, these are wins, these are wins. We have learned already this year. If you're playing a middle of the road team, South Carolina, for example, and you're Alabama and South Carolina's not ranked, you still, I think they won by 2. You still have to
Yeah.
fight like a dog against Minnesota, middle of the road team. They beat SC and UCLA back-to-back weeks at the end of the game. Nebraska's not ranked right now. Nebraska is a team that you do not want to sleep on. One more win and they will be ranked, by the way, or if they're not already. I don't. Are they in the top 25 now? Nebraska, they
You know
might
what?
be.
To be honest with you, I mean, I think, and I might sound crazy here, we might catch some, but I think that Nebraska team is actually better than Penn State. I think Penn State's is a fraud, and I think it's a fraud. They should have lost that game against USC. They escaped with. I actually think that Nebraska with Dylan is actually a better team overall than Penn State. I'd be wrong, but that's my opinion.
That's one of the best games this weekend is Nebraska, Indiana. That's going to be fun. Like Nebraska has a chance to kind of show, and I still love Indiana too. So that game is one to watch. USC, if you really think about it, has been in their three losses. They've had a chance to win all three of them. And I agree
Yeah.
with Coach Riley. I think USC and UCLA have both played horrific schedules. Like they've both had really really tough schedules. USC probably should be at least one or two wins better than they are. I do agree with you a little bit. I think Penn State has some holes. I think we saw with Drew Aller having to throw the ball 40 something times and having three interceptions. I don't think that's what they want to do with him. I think they want to run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. I also thought Penn State got way too cute with trying to get Tyler Warren the ball like on every play. Um, I really thought the game plan for Penn State should have been run, 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 play action, run, 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 play action, run, 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 and that you can get Tyler Warren the ball that way too. Hey, but they won. They won the
Yeah.
game. It was crazy. Went to overtime. Had to kick a field goal to do it. Um, but USC should be kicking itself because they have a couple wins they've left out there.
Yeah. They went from being a for sure, if they would've won that game, a top 12 playoff contender to now just kind of fringing on trying to get in a bowl game. So, how do they rebound from that, Wayne? Losing a close game like that to Penn State, knowing you should have won that game, right? And what do you have left to play for? Mediocre bowl game, or how do you keep that team right now, that mindset to stay focused and try to get a upper tier bowl?
So this is the stuff that I will never understand. So if Anthony, you come over to my house tomorrow and we find a basketball hoop and we're gonna play, I'm going to want to beat you, no matter what. I don't care if nobody's watching. We're not going to record it. It's not a part of the podcast. I will want to beat you. And if I don't, I will shake your hand and I will smile and I will say good game and I will go home and I'll be grumpy and I'll be mad at my dog and I don't like to lose. And I don't really understand the concept that players don't have anything to play for because all these guys want to play at the next level. And if you're the type of player that's going to quit on your team because things get rough, then if I'm a GM, I don't want you. Like, why would you want it? You want, have you seen, the Tom Brady commercial where he's got all the past him
Yeah.
and they're like in his head about like, being a great broadcaster. Like they think you should quit. They think you should just walk away from football. And he's like, screw that. I'm going to be the best broadcaster there is. I love that commercial because the reason why Tom Brady's Tom Brady is because he had a chip on his shoulder his entire career. He like somehow convinced himself that people were doubting him. And he just kept getting better and better. With the greatest athletes in the world, Tiger Woods, if you asked him tomorrow if he was going to play in a golf tournament, and they ask him because they always do, hey, Tiger, do you think you can win? I love he always gets that smile on his face like, dude, do you even know me? Of course I think I win. If everything goes right and my body holds up, I can beat all these idiots out here. And he will
Yeah.
probably say that when he's 95 years old because that
Yeah.
is the way he's wired. This
Yeah.
idea that athletes have nothing to play for anymore, it kills me. And I'll go back to again, I talked about that senior year where we had the losing streak. We won the last three games of our season that year. We beat Stanford, and I think we ended up winning because we completed a 2-point conversion to JJ, which was really cool. And those are good Bill Walsh led Stanford teams. We went to Arizona State and played at their place and had the highest offensive output in the history of UCLA football. 690, whatever, some stupid number of yards. I threw for 399 in like 2.5 quarters, and we just destroyed them. And so it was what my coaches called offensive explosion. And then USC, who still had an outside chance of making the Rose Bowl, we were losing 12-3 at halftime in 1994. We ended up beating them like 31-19. Best third quarter I've ever played in my life. So if I would have quit and said what's left, I would have missed out on the best third quarter I've ever played against my crosstown rival. I also became at that time the first quarterback to beat USC 2 years in a row. I would have missed out on that. And I would have missed out on the best. Now it's been broken since then, but it took like 20 something years before a team got more yards than we did. And the best offensive performance in the history of our school. So no, you don't quit. And everybody that was on that team says those last three games, we say we were 5-6. We could play with anybody because we were healthy. Same team that went to the Rose Bowl the year before. We finally got healthy and we were like, man, we're good. So heck yeah, you keep playing. You tell all these guys, like, you're playing for your futures, you're playing for your teammates, you're playing for your buddies on your right and on your left. Yeah, you keep playing and you try to get to the best bowl game you can get to because it helps the team in the future. If you finish strong,
Yeah.
just like I was talking about with UCLA, it helps you recruit. Players want to play for winners. So again, I don't like the whole what do they have to I hate players that opt out and be like, yeah, I'm done. I'm more worried about myself. I can't relate to any of that stuff. I played my whole career injured. I was never healthy. You just keep going. You play for your teammates. And so that's my opinion. I know it may be a little bit old school, but if Lincoln Riley has the type of players that he wants, he shouldn't have to work that hard to keep motivated. We've talked about it a lot, even UCLA. That like the one thing that I love about being 1-5, these guys are still practicing their butts off. They wanted to win that Minnesota game so bad. Those guys were trying so hard. I've seen teams quit before. I've seen it. I know what it looks like. And these teams don't have that. So hopefully SC is the same way. I'm not on the sidelines at their games as much, but I hope all those players keep busting their butts. Three lot they might win out. You end up, 9-3. That's a pretty darn good year. I may not, be what SC people want, but that would be a great way to finish the season. So heck yeah, you keep fighting.
So passionate, Wayne, and I'm looking forward to that ball game that we're gonna play that 1-1. All right, so let's pick some games. You know what? You're right on point last week. Let's pick some games real quick, Wayne. Purdue plays Oregon this week, and Oregon is actually a 28-point favorite. 28 points. Whoa. Who do you think is going to win that game, and what's the margin of victory on that one?
Purdue's been fighting. I forget. I'm forgetting right now off the top of my head who they played last week, but they were in it. It was like a 2-point game. I mean, they fought. They're not good though. Oregon's way better. So I worry about the 28 points only because they just played such a huge game. I mean, it's like the perfect place to see a little bit of letdown, but they've got way too many good players. I really like Dylan Gabriel. I've told you this before. I like his feet. I like his leadership. I like his arm strength. I like his touch. I mean, I really like just about everything about him. He's a really good player. And so I just and not to mention Oregon's got a defense. People always want to talk about offense, but man, they're good. And so I like Oregon. It may be 21 instead of 28.
Yeah.
But if they're awake and they bring it, I don't hate the number. I just hate the number because it's a week after they just played Ohio State.
I agree. I agree. I think it's going to be a 35-10 type of ball game. They're going to let loose in the fourth quarter. Good call on that one, Wayne. Now, we're talking about SC now. SC plays Maryland. Should be a win for SC. They're 7-point favorites on that. They're going to Maryland. Weather is going to be perfect, about 70 degrees, no wind. Wayne, who wins that one and why?
I think SC, but like it's because SC's better. Again, SC is a really good 3-3 football team. It's not
I
like
agree.
they've lost any games that they just lost a really tough game to Penn State. At Michigan, which we know is a very difficult place to play. There's games that they should be winning. They have to find a way to finish. I really like Miller Moss. I like the talent they have. I like Marks at running back. I mean, I think he's really really good. I just think they've got a lot of talent, and Maryland's not there.
Yeah.
They're not a terrible team, but they're not good enough. But here's the deal, though: it's the travel.
Yeah.
Maryland's all the way on the other side of the country, just like UCLA going to Rutgers. We're both traveling all the way. This is a 3 time zone thing. And if you pay attention to the numbers, and I'm gonna off the top of my head, I think the teams that are traveling 3 time zones are like 3 and 10 or something like that. So, and if I'm wrong on that, I'm admitting that I may be wrong on that, but it's something like that. There's a lot more losses for teams, and if you think about it, UCLA has actually given up two of those. 2 of the 3 because of Indiana and Minnesota coming to the Rose Bowl and winning. And I think if maybe Miami going to Cal, that's a game that, and let's face it, Cal had that game. So
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest question mark. I think USC is the better team. I worry a little bit about the travel because I'm feeling that that's more real than I thought it was going to be. I actually went into the season saying, who cares? But I'm making these trips, and I'm
Yeah.
kidding, man. It's a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. But I think SC wins. I think they probably win. I would give them a 2 touchdown victory. I think their offense is really good. I would love it if they'd keep balance. I really want them to keep running the rock because I think they're good at this, and their defense is improved. It's not spectacular, but it's much improved. I like USC.
Good comment with you on that one too, Wayne. Hey, why don't you deep dive that real quick, Wayne, quickly? What is it about the time travel, two time zones that throws the players off? Is it the routine or is it just the adjustment of just getting on the field? What is it about that time travel that affects the player the most?
I don't know. I mean, I wish I did have the answer. I just know that like Penn State, for example, like it just took me like I felt like it wasn't necessarily bad when I was there, but it like felt like it took me a while to recover afterwards. Like it was like midweek when I was starting to feel kind of like, okay, I'm back on even though you're only there for a couple of days, it just feels like you get way off. I was waking up here at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, why am I waking up so early? So I
Yeah.
just feel like anytime you go up in the air, it affects your body at that altitude. You're in the air for 5, 6 hours. They're long flights. Um, you kind of get to your hotel and you're doing a bunch of stuff, but you don't really have time to just kind of relax and get acclimated. The next thing you know, you're playing a game. Especially, Penn State was the 9 o'clock our time, 12 o'clock there. Same thing with Rutgers. This is a 12 noon, 9 o'clock our time game. I know we practice at 9 o'clock in the morning, but still, you're getting, and I haven't looked. I don't know if UCLA is leaving. I think they're leaving on Thursday. I think they're leaving tomorrow.
Yeah, they're leaving tomorrow.
Which is a really smart idea. It's a really smart idea because then it gives you that extra day to kind of get acclimated. Um, but again, it's tough. It's tough for both USC and UCLA, and hopefully because UCLA is the dog, but it's only like 4.5 or whatever it is, and I think
Yeah.
SC's favored. I haven't looked, but what you know what the number is for SC?
SC's 7 points and UCLA is 4.5 dogs. I don't want you to pick the game for UCLA now. I just want you to actually just deep dive into actually some of the stuff that UCLA has to look forward to. Besides the time travel, what is it on offense that you like the most from Rutgers, and how do you think UCLA can contain that?
Well, they've got the running back who's really good. I mean, he's got over 700 yards of offense. Manun guy. Kyle Manun guy. He's really good. Um, they don't throw the ball well. I am not impressed with their quarterback at all. They haven't been scoring points. The last 2 games they've had 7 points. I think it's strength on strength for UCLA. I think our rush defense, led by Jay Tuia and geez, Carson Swessinger, who's like the best tackler in the world right now. Um, excuse me. I think Carson and Kane and Ale, and then we got Femi coming off the edge. I just think the rush defense has been really solid. I mean, listen, Minnesota's a very good running team with Darius Taylor, and he didn't do jack squat. So
Yeah.
this team can do that. And the pass defense is misleading because I thought last week I couldn't believe how many passes were thrown that our guys were literally blanketing the receiver and had a hand in front of the ball and literally would miss their hand and the receiver would. I mean, it happened like 5 or 6 times. Like you can't cover a guy better than that, and they still ended up
Yeah.
getting completions. It's like, when you're losing, the everything seems to go wrong that can go wrong. But there was a ton of plays like that. So I'm actually, even though the pass defense ranking wise isn't very good, they're better than their ranking. I really do believe that. So I feel really good about the strength on strength thing, especially when Rutgers has the ball. But I'm still going to keep questioning the offense. I can't sit here in front of you and look at you and lie and act like because we just literally, I watched the O line and I do think we're getting better at pass blocking. But I found another I found another target of someone that's moving way too slow, seems to be leaning on people. I'm not going to call anybody out, but it's like, my God, I go, you got to get those legs moving. And yet when you have 4 of the 5 guys look like they're moving the way they're supposed to, and one guy looks like he's a step slow, it just jumps off the screen to me. So like we already had 2 guys replaced, and I think that that's helped. And I'm not saying we should replace this guy. I'm hoping it was a 1 week thing last week. Um, but we've got to be better at getting some sort of a push because if we can't run the ball, it makes it excuse me, it makes it really hard to win, and especially in the Big Ten. I mean, and again, the Big Ten's a conference that likes to win at the line of scrimmage and run the football. So UCLA's been so good at that the last 4 or 5 years that it
Yeah.
just it stinks to see us really struggle. Um, so that's where I'm worried about. I think the defense is going to be fine. I think this is a perfect game for them. Offensively, UCLA's got to find a way. We got to get in the 20s. I feel like
Yeah.
if we get in the 20s, we're going to win. And that's not even asking a lot. I mean, 20, 25 points in a modern college football era is what you should be like. That should be your bottom,
Yeah.
not your top.
You know, it's so sad because I still think that our receiving core is top tier. I think it's still top three in the Big Ten. Put those group of guys with a protected O line, and you'll see, the 30s, maybe 20s and 30s for sure. But I'm with you, Wayne. I think if we get that offense going, I think it should be an easy win at Rutgers. But again, nothing is guaranteed, especially on the road. Wayne, looking forward to next week and the results. This concludes, guys, another great episode. Thank you, Wayne, for the expertise and deep dive into your experience. I know that's one of the stuff that the fans are looking forward to, getting your expertise and really the reality of the game. That's one of the benefits of having you on the show, and it's an honor.
Thanks, Anthony, man. It's always fun, and we got to get these former Pac-12 schools just to have a better week this week. I know one of them's not playing, but let's get some wins.
Yeah. And next week we'll have a special guest with me and Wayne. We're gonna have Donovan Carter, the honorary captain from last week's game against Minnesota, join us. And guys, this concludes another episode of West Coast Big Ten.